Hey guys, Alchemist here. I hope you've all had an incredible week. I know I personally have. I'm happy to announce that I've now completed my double degree majoring in finance and philosophy, and I'm finally back being 100% in the community and into my own personal trading. If you're new to this channel, every weekend I do upload a new video, which is usually a market outlook on AUDUSD, EURUSD, as well as Pound USD. And after my coming holiday to Bali, I will actually be uploading 2 YouTube videos per week. So that will be the first or second week back from December. So make sure you do subscribe now and turn on that notification button so you are aware of all new uploads in the future. And now let's get into AU and look at the previous week's outlook, which if you haven't yet seen, I will post a link up here, as it's always good to go back and sort of understand the thought process and see how the different POIs interact and whether or not my outlook was actually correct. So now looking at AU, what I was suspecting was that this here would be a targeted high on the 4 hour, that we would potentially be sweeping it, seeing some sort of reaction, and then taking the daily high. And that is in fact what has occurred. The pullback was more significant than I thought it would be. And then we of course had the news announcement here on Thursday, which was CPI rates. So what we had here was price breaking this current 4 hour high, creating a new 4 hour boss or breaker structure, having a pullback, sweeping below here. So let's mark out the sweep before then pushing to the upside with the announcement of the news. So this here was that liquidity sweep. Get rid of these lines just to make it a little bit more neat. And now let's mark up the new structure points, as once this daily high broke here, and we will just go to the daily just to have a look. But yes, we did have a body close above. So once we had this body close above here, this became our daily breaker structure. So we mark that as our daily boss. We get rid of the previous one. The daily low remains the same, as it's just the lowest point below this breaker structure line, which is still currently this point here. And we did also have a 4 hour breaker structure. So the 4 hour boss here, we can get rid of the targeted line. We know it was targeted and it did in fact fail. We can get rid of that one. And then once we've had this close here, this was our 4 hour boss. Now we delete the old 4 hour boss line and the old 4 hour range, and then we move the low to just this one here, which I think was like 0.1 or 0.2 pips lower. So this is currently our 4 hour low, being the lowest point below this 4 hour break of structure line. We can get rid of these now. We can mark up the corresponding POIs in a second. These still remain the same, as they're still unmitigated and still within our 4 hour range. We can draw those out like that. And then we see here, we had a very slight interaction when we swept the daily boss. We've pushed down, we've created this flip zone. So we have this POI here, which was very nice, swept liquidity and is fully engulfed and led to a boss. So this is a valid POI, as if you're a member of the community, you'll know exactly what makes the POIs valid. And then we do also have these buy to sell wicks here acting as a flip zone, which flipped the previous supply and broke the daily high. So this here is the buy to sell wicks that caused the flip, and we do have some inducement just above them too, which is nice. We can see above here as well, we are actually tapping into our weekly supply zone. So if you go back out to the weekly, I'll just show you these buy to sell wicks that we had here. Why they're the supply zone is that we had this acting as a demand zone. Okay, it's a demand zone as it set a new higher high. So this would have been the previous lower high, tapped in, made a lower low, pushed above, made a higher high. And then we've tapped back into this demand, and demand has tried to hold, and we see that through the wick above this bearish candle here. But essentially that demand failed and then supply took control. This is that last point of interaction before supply really took control and pushed price into the weekly demand that we currently reacted from. So we're now tapping back into the weekly supply. So again, you can take this as sort of the flip zone. Price is fractal, so the same sort of setups that we see on the 1 minute, they also occur on the weekly, on the monthly, on the 4 hour, on any other time frame. So if we look at it just like this, you would see this sort of as a chalk. So we've taken the high, we've taken the low. Okay, this is that last point, and then we of course have the extreme. So they're the two sort of supply zones on the weekly. This is a very, very large zone, 220 pips. Just to be aware of, and you can see obviously it's half of it's been mitigated, so we can take the unmitigated portion above. We can refine it even to this one here as well. So there are a few points that would be of interest, but that's yet to be seen. What we want to first now see is whether or not this supply in and of itself is going to hold. Okay, So this was on the weekly. Let's go. We already know that daily we had a new boss, just confirming that there. Now we'll go back down to the 4 hour. So 4 hour, we're bullish. We created a new 4 hour boss. We have this POI. We have these two unmitigated zones, which were part of the previous 4 hour range as well. And now we're tapping into that weekly demand. If we have a look to the left here and try to refine a bit as well, you can see we have this wick here, which swept liquidity. Okay, it was slightly mitigated there. And it swept the liquidity above all of these candles that were trading lower, took the high and then closed below. That's the liquidity sweep we have there. And then we have, let's have a look at this price action here. Price interacted, pushed down, pushed back up. We have this sort of as that last point, or even you can take these as buy to sell wicks, which flipped that supply. So we have a flip zone here, as we did have a candle close above. Yep, we have a candle close above that refined zone. And we're in the overall sort of weekly supply range at the moment. So what we could potentially see, what I'd love to see occur is, given how close we are to that weekly range, I'd love to see the high of this being swept, okay, to initiate that bearish pullback. So I'd love to see this being swept. And then, as I was speaking to the members previously, when we do have a lot of bullish momentum like this, price will not tend to come all the way back down to EQ. We can sort of just stop at the next unmitigated demand zone and price could continue to hold. So we could potentially see something like this tapping into that higher supply zone that we saw on the weekly. Or we could be tapping into this, which is a nicer zone just because it's had a little bit more interaction. So we could potentially be seeing, sorry, wrong one, potentially be seeing price sweep this, which is the current weekly supply, pushing. When we do come back down here, this will still give us a reaction, and then it could potentially be breaking. If it does break below, and we are bearish on the 15-minute, which to cause this we would need to be, as we return to this range, we can potentially be looking for sells from this region to the next unmitigated demand, which would be this one. And then at that point, at this demand, we'd love to see whether or not price gives us a change of character to allow us to continue taking longs up and until the next supply zone unmitigated above, or if price actually does need a little bit more volume, which it will find in the liquidity resting in this POI here. When we do have imbalance like this and no structure to trade from, we potentially may be targeting the liquidity below the actual imbalance itself. So there will be liquidity here, which I'll mark up in just a second. But what that means is we could sort of be seeing a reaction here, then sweeping the low, before then having that push back up. But I do think we will see some higher pricing on AU for a little while longer, maybe up until we get into this supply zone. We do have the other one above as well. It's yet to be seen. We're not here to predict. We're just going to react, but using the expectation of order flow and looking at how current structure is forming, I would sort of anticipate that AU does have some potential to move to the upside. A lot of it was driven by the news event. However, they tend to be in line with one another, meaning that using market structure, we should sort of be able to understand where fundamentals will be pushing the market, as we can identify liquidity points and pools of liquidity in the market, which price will be seeking to have its orders filled. So this is sort of what we're looking at for AU for the coming week. Let's have a look back next week to see if this was accurate, and let's progress with the next couple of pairs. So looking at this, the two scenarios that we thought might play out was the first one being that we needed to go a bit lower to collect more orders before then coming back up and breaking above this 4-hour high, or that simply we would flip this supply, have an interaction here with these buy to sell wicks, create a new flip zone, and then take this 4-hour high, as this was targeted as it failed to set a new lower low. So we see that that's actually what's occurred here. And then we had the news come on Thursday, which has catapulted us above and actually broken above the daily high. So we'll go back out and remark up the daily levels and the new 4-hour boss. We can also see here, once we had this interaction with this supply, we've created this POI here, which is the flip of this supply, and price exactly tapped into this on Thursday night in Australia, which was when the, I believe it was CPI news came out. And then that's when we saw this massive expansion to the upside. This was quite a large move. It's that 224 pips in a single 4-hour candle. So yeah, if you did capitalize on that, well done. As per my rules, I don't believe we would have got a confirmation entry there. And I also do just stay away when we have such large news events, as oftentimes you can get slipped, or even if you did have a nice entry there, you'll get tagged out quickly due to spreads, and then you would actually have the trade play out in your favor. It's happened to me multiple times in the past, and now I just have the wisdom to stay away. So we'll delete this. The new daily high here, once we had this candle close, and we'll just go to the daily to confirm that we had a body close above, which we have had. This therefore becomes our new daily boss. And the lowest point below that line is going to be the daily low, so that doesn't need to change. This whole zone here as well, if we quickly go out to the weekly, was actually the weekly supply that we were within, and we have now broken above. So we can delete, this one here, and we can now see that the new supply that we're currently trading from is this candle. Right, so prices in this weekly demand. Knowing this, we can expect that the coming week, especially Monday and Tuesday, is most likely going to be ranging for quite some time, as there are going to still be a lot of orders to be fulfilled within this order block or within this supply. So when we do tap into here, which we are in it right now, we will sort of range a bit sideways before then seeing prices' true intentions. So that's the weekly supply. Weekly demand remains the same. We've marked out our new daily breakup structure. We'll just confirm that here. Once we had this candle close above, which this was previously the daily high, we had the daily boss, lowest point below being the daily low. So that's all we need to do on the daily time frame. And then if we go to the 4 hour, this 4 hour high here was just wicked, and we can see I actually had marked out that there was liquidity resting above here. And what we can see is price reached exactly for that liquidity. Looks like it only actually went above by a pip or so, and then taken all that liquidity to push it down into this supply flip, perfectly timed with when the news was coming out, and then we saw that massive expansion above. So this 4 hour high therefore becomes our 4 hour boss once we had that candle close above, meaning the 4 hour low needs to move to the lowest point below that line, which is this candle here. And we won't yet have our 4 hour high, as we haven't yet had a bearish pullback of at least 80 pips. So as we haven't yet had that for EU, we can't yet mark out our 4 hour high. And we can see here even this supply zone that I had marked out to the left, which is this very nice engulfed candle here. There was an interaction causing these buy to sell wicks. So we could potentially see that price maybe coming back to retest these levels. We do also have inducement just above in this inside bar. Mark this out as a demand. Okay, let's make this a bit more neat. So this was the supply here. We interacted there. Price came down, gave us this, which actually swept the liquidity from all these candles. Interacted. Demand tried to hold, pushed up. Demand failed, tapped into the lower flip zone. News, boom, catapult above. So that's sort of what's occurred there. Let me just mark this all the way out. And then this was the extreme supply of the previous 4 hour range, which was swept here. So I'll just change this to a sweep line. Beautiful. Push down, push back up, swept the liquidity through this wick, push back down, interacted with this demand. Demand failed, tapped into the lower flip zone, and we have gone above. Let me just draw this one out a little bit more. Perfect. So here, this is that weekly supply that we were just looking at before, and we can see we're right almost at the edge of it. So we could potentially be sweeping this before having a bearish reaction, given how close we are to it. That would be a very nice indication that price will retrace, at least just for a little while, before then moving back up again. And something I was talking to the members about the other night in the Zoom session was when we have such a large expansion like this, when we see so much momentum, price will rarely come all the way back to EQ straight away. It might be in the following sort of range, but what I mean by that is if we've created this range here, say that this will be our 4 hour high if we do actually sweep above and have that bearish pullback, price will most likely just want to come to sort of here. Maybe this POI, this would be a very nice one, but given how much momentum we're pushing up with and how much bullish volume we'd be holding in this move, it's unlikely that price will need to return all the way back here to gather more orders, as it's still sustaining and holding so many orders within here. The only thing to note is when we do sweep, or if we do sweep, above here, we will be taking quite a lot of stop losses and buy stops. So that liquidity is going to be quite sufficient in pushing us down. So essentially what I mean by this is I'd like to see this high being swept. Then this sweep is going to indicate sort of whether or not price is going to come all the way down, maybe just to sort of this interaction here. So we could either come here and continue up, or we could be tapping into this, potentially even sweeping this zone, having a change character bullish, and then taking longs to target the new 4 hour high. Okay. Or we could go to the lower zone, which actually is in discount if this does become our 4 hour high. Remember, right now we don't actually have our 4 hour high as we haven't initiated the bearish pullback. But if we do initiate that pullback after sweeping this weekly supply, then ideally it would be great to see price come all the way back into discount, into this POI, which is very, very nice. It's a POI that's swept liquidity. It's been engulfed. It's had interaction. So that would be a great zone to be taking continuation longs from. And then I do see that EU will remain bullish just for a little while longer. Potentially, if we go back out to the weekly, I want to see where the next sort of target would be. Okay, so we've got this one here. Be good to look back on this in a couple of weeks or a month's time to see if this actually does get hit. So this here, we would have seen this as a demand zone. Okay. And if we talk through price here, what would have occurred was we would have pushed up, created a new higher high over this high. Remember guys, this is the weekly. So above here, there would have most likely been a daily high. We've broken above that daily high, meaning the daily was actually bullish at this point. Tapped into this supply through this wick here, pushed back down into demand. Demand has tried to hold. We've actually swept liquidity above those two candles as well, which I'll mark out in just a second. And then supply has held. Okay, so that's sort of what price is doing here. We've now come back into this, which is we've flipped this supply. Okay, and now we're in a much more significant sort of zone. If we can see, this was a pullback of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 weeks, as opposed to this one here, which is just a 2-week pullback. So there were a lot more orders initiated here. And we can see if we do close above here, we'll actually have a bullish chock on the weekly, which is a very significant time frame to see a change of character, which would definitely sort of indicate that we could be seeing higher prices, maybe into this supply zone or maybe into this supply zone above. So if I just mark out the liquidity sweep and where I'm seeing the chock as well, so this here, this is where the sweep would have been. And then if we look at this, we do actually already have a chock a bit lower. So we have one here. Where that daily boss line is, that would be the lower part of the change of character. And the highest point above here where the daily boss is, so I actually need to delete the old daily boss one. Okay, and then where this other daily boss line is, this would be the chock up as well. So what this is indicating here is price has come up, created a supply zone. We have a supply zone because it's created a new lower low. Price has interacted with that supply zone, given us a flip, and then we've closed above with a body. We are still within this, so the overall chock has not yet occurred, but the sort of internal one, you could say, has already occurred, which is sort of indicating that price will or should remain bullish at least for a little while longer. So that's yet to be seen. We're not going to predict. We are only just going to react after seeing what the market gives us. But this seems like a nice sort of target to target. If this does not hold, we do also have the extreme of this leg, which is yet to be mitigated as well. And we can see the flip zone below is actually sort of playing as inducement to this zone. So whilst it itself has swept liquidity in this candle, now the liquidity rests above this candle. Okay, and this one here is liquidity to be swept. Perfect. I actually have just released a free lecture on liquidity from the course. And if you haven't yet seen that, I'll link it in the video on the top right corner here. So please do go ahead and watch that and let me know any of your feedback. And if you are interested in learning about what more is included in the course, I'm more than happy to answer any questions via email or Discord. And both of those places will be listed in the description of the video below. So going now back to the 4-hour. We know that these are the two weekly supplies that we were just talking about. This is the flip and this is the extreme. So ideally, we'd like to see this weekly supply being swept, coming back down. Ideally, we'd love it to come into discount. Doesn't need to, especially after this large momentum. So even from here would be a good place to start looking for longs. To target the flip, if we then turn bearish on the 15-minute, we could play short-term shorts. Remember, overall, we would still be bullish on the 4-hour, so it would only just be to the next unmitigated demand zone. But if the 4-hour was to turn bearish at this point, then we should be taking shorts from here and sort of targeting somewhere lower here. You wouldn't obviously be holding the whole of your volume to the bottom, just a few peanuts left, maybe just whatever your volume is, maybe 5% or something like that, just because if we were to turn bearish here, and given the overall sort of market conditions and the weekly being so bearish still, we could see lower prices yet. So that's everything for EU. Let's see how this works out for next week, and let's jump on and have a look at GU. So the outlook for GU actually looks quite good. I was suspecting that price would want to come back down to these buy to sell wicks before pushing up. However, it hasn't yet come all the way down. Did have a slight reaction when we tapped into here. So if you look at this as sort of our supply range, price tapped into this supply range, pushed down. We had this inside bar before the expansion above. And then I was suspecting that we would come into this supply and then see a bearish pullback. So we did see that here. And then that price would sort of push up and break this daily and 4-hour high, which it has actually done that on its way to the next weekly supply. Similar sort of scenario as we just saw on EU. So let's now mark up the new breaks of structure and see where we should be heading next, or could be. Market doesn't need to do what we suspect it to do, but we can sort of look at places of high probability and look to follow from there. We can also see that the other zone that I'd marked up here had a very nice reaction below as well. And then this came into these buy to sell wicks, so this POI and then the bottom of this wick here. Beautiful. We have a change of character there. I personally don't mark change of characters on the 4-hour, as all the members of the community would know, but that would be the high being taken, then the low. Okay. But then obviously we can see here that was blown straight through, and we had the news announcement on Thursday night. So we can get rid of this. We've now taken the liquidity above here. That's pushed us up into this supply. This supply has given us a reaction back down into this demand, which has flipped this supply. And now we've actually broken the daily and the 4-hour high. So we can mark it out now as daily plus 4-hour boss. Get rid of the previous range. Get rid of the previous boss line. And now our new daily and 4-hour low is just going to be the lowest point below this line. And again, if you haven't yet seen my market structure video, I'll also post a link to that one above in the corner here. So this will be the low. And just as we saw on EU as well, we won't yet have our daily and 4-hour high, as we haven't yet had a bearish pullback. So we can't exactly be dropping our range just yet. So again, here we can see that we've had interaction. We've created these buy to sell wicks as a flip of the actual daily boss of the previous daily high. So this one here. Again, we've printed the exact same looking inside bar as we did on EU. Okay, so we've got that there. We have this very nice demand with all of this imbalance above. Okay, we have this one, which was mitigated by that POI. And then did this interact with anything to the left? So we've swept here, this here, here. It looks like this engulfed buy to sell. If we take it from here, as this whole supply range. So this is where we're currently trading within. We haven't yet broken above this. And we can see we are sort of creating this would be a nice flip if we do break above, because it has swept liquidity below the previous candle as well. And this is the 4-hour. So if we go lower, we would see a series of higher highs and then the low being taken and then the high being taken. So this here would be that sweep. Okay, so ideally, again, we'd like to see this being swept. Maybe that maybe that is what will provide us the liquidity for the bearish move down. As mentioned, when we see such a large impulse like this, price won't need to come all the way back down to EQ, meaning if we do close above, we can actually be looking for buys in and around this range if we do have 15-minute realigning bullish, to then be taking continuation longs into this previous weekly supply, or maybe there was another zone here, which let's just actually have a look. Let's see if we can refine on the 4-hour to find anything here. Okay, so we have a lot of imbalance here. So potentially just these candles. Okay, so ideally what we would like to see is price sweeping this current weekly supply. Oh, sorry, this is not a weekly supply. This is just a 4-hour supply range. We'd love to see this being swept. Whether then that gives us the reaction into this zone before pushing back up, or into this zone, which is the flip of the previous daily high, which is now the daily break of structure, or even we do have the very nice POI below, but as mentioned, especially with all this imbalance, it's unlikely we're going to be filling it straight away. It will be filled eventually in the future, but when that is to occur is yet to be known. So ideally, sweep this, come back down, either take longs from here, or wait to see if this is going to hold, and then take your longs here after we've had a 15-minute change of character bullish, to then be targeting this supply, which is nested within the overall weekly supply above. So that's what I believe based on order flow and structure GU should be heading. So the other scenario would be that we start going bullish from now and saying that this here supply is going to hold. This will then be a catalyst for a pullback. And then we can see lower prices into here. If this was to create our 4-hour range, so this would be the low. And if we do start seeing a bearish pullback, let's just say it occurs exactly from where we are now, because we don't actually know if we will sweep this or where the pullback will initiate from. But if it was from there, this would be the first demand inside discount, at which point we would need to see what price's true intentions were and where we could be seeing price to move in the future. So let's look at this next week and have a look at whether or not this was accurate. Another thing I wanted to mention to you guys is everyone who was on the original Foundations 50 waiting list. There are a few of you who I have been emailing and I haven't been receiving any sort of responses back. If you're no longer interested, that's completely fine. If you want to let me know, that would be great, and I won't continue to follow you up. But if you are still on there and you are receiving my emails, please have a look over the next coming days, as there is a special offer that's going to be in there for you guys as well. And for anyone who is currently listening to this or through YouTube and you weren't on the Foundations 50 plan, keep an eye out on the video next weekend, which I will also be announcing that there is something coming for you guys as well, just to give you a bit of a taste of what's in the course and get you started so that we can see you becoming consistently profitable if you would like to be funded traders and seeing you achieve all that it is that you want to achieve. So I hope you all have a wonderful week ahead. Let's have a look at this next week. I'm very interested to see where price will be heading if we do tap into these weekly supplies on all the USD crosses. And I will chat to you all soon. If you have any questions regarding anything, my DMs on Discord are always open. Or if you also want to send me an email, my email is in the description of this video below. Stay safe and have a wonderful week ahead. Thanks, guys.